just got to be me. And frankly, because if you're walking through life pretending you're somebody else, then people don't even really know who you are. And if they like you, they like the show you're putting on, not the real you.
Well, yeah, and also what you're kind of speaks to our shared temperament as well. See, in the 16 personality types, there's 4 temperaments,
Oh, yeah.
and we're of the same temperament, which is the NT temperament, which is intuitive thinking. That's what that stands for. And intuitive thinkers are all about truth and authenticity.
And this has been known since before the time of Plato. They
Back
had
at
noticed,
Hippocrates.
yes, way
Yeah.
back in the time of the Greeks, and that there was 4 overarching personality types. And each of these personality types have certain specific things that you can say about them, which will tend to be true. It's something you can expect from them. NTs, according to C.S. Joseph, by the way, lots of good information on his channel on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yes, it is C.S. Joseph. Yes, according to C.S. Joseph, NTs are officially intellectuals. And they're the only intellectuals. Of the 16 personality types, there are 4 types that are NTs. They are the intellectuals. Now, there's a lot of STs that will go to college, get credentials, and do quite well in college. Some very smart ISTJs and so forth. And they might be a bit insulted if you said you're not an intellectual, but from a cognitive
Well, let's not
function,
get academics and intelligence mixed up.
yeah, he would, C.S. Joseph, and I think this was accurate, he says they're academics, they're not intellectuals. I am a born thinker that analyzes what-if scenarios. That's an intellectual, and that's what an NT does. Your thinking is in your top 2 functions, and your intuitive function is in your top 2 functions. That's what makes you an NT.
And his first 2 cognitive functions as an INTP is TINE. My first 2 top functions as an INTJ is NITE.
At first, these letters designations can seem to be a bit confusing, but there are only 8. And they are all versions of T, N, S, and F. And every one of them has a subletter which says whether or not it's external or internal.
So you have like T or F, thinking or feeling, okay? So are you thinking introvertedly like him, or do you think extrovertedly like me? Same with feeling, extroverted feeling or introverted feeling. See, and that would be the judgments. And then you have the perceptions. Perceptions is an N or an S. S is sensing, N is intuitive. We are both intuitives. So, and then you can have sensing introverted or extroverted, and you can have intuitive introverted or extroverted. He's intuitive extroverted, I'm intuitive introverted.
Yes, and the Myers-Briggs, the reason that's mentioned a lot, the MBTI, is because they really actually did a good job of refining what the Jungian cognitive functions were all about. The Jungian psychology, he pretty much concentrated on the first 2 cognitive functions, but I think they matured the science to say that your personality type has 4 functions associated with it, and that included all 4 letters, T, S, F, and N. And what was really cool was, and I'm not sure who exactly did this, maybe it was them, I haven't really looked into it, but there's an association between the T and the F. They are called an axis. So I have TI, so that's thinking introverted, and it is always on the axis with FE, feelings extroverted. So I think internal, but I feel, and that means that I reference my own internal knowledge while I'm doing my logic and my thinking. And I don't necessarily rely on external sources. I look at my own experience, things I've learned over the years, and I build a structure of information that I reference, and then I add to it with more thinking. That's TI. But then what's associated with that on the axis is feelings extroverted. So when I think about feelings, I'm concerned with and thinking about how other people are feeling. How am I affecting the way they're feeling? How is this person over here affecting? What's the mood of the room? I think about that a lot. For me, because TI is first, and by the way, here's the interesting part of it. The first function is on the axis with your 4th, which is your inferior, least good at function.
So he's the best at TI, but out of his 4, he's the worst at FE. And with them being on an axis, you could see it like this is his TI, and this is his FE.
Yeah. If you think of the 4 functions, the first function is your strongest function, called hero function. Can do it all day long, and you won't mentally burn out from it. Second function, parent function. That's the function that you use to be responsible with your life.
And it's also the function that supports your hero function.
And it will
as well.
support your hero function.
Yeah.
It helps your hero know the right and wrong thing to do. Then you have your third function, which is called a child function. And by the way, your second and third function are also on the axis. So while my first function, TI, connects with my fourth function, FE, my second function, NE, connects with my third function, SI. So N and S are on an axis.
But your second and third functions being on an axis are closer together than your first and last functions. So they're used together more in conjunction. Like for example, my second and third is TEFI. So that's extroverted thinking, and then that's introverted feeling. And I can actually use my introverted feeling to help sometimes in certain situations. And this is my judgment axis. You know, I make my judgments primarily with my TE, but because my FI is third position, I can also go into that FI, which is basically morals.
Yes, your third function, it turns out, you use a lot even as a child, but it doesn't necessarily grow up all that much. That function stays rather innocent. And so what each personality type has in that third position greatly affects how they walk through life. Candy's FI, which is feelings introverted, she's concerned with, very aware of, how she feels about things. And what comes with this is the ability to make moral judgments for good and bad, right and wrong. And so she has a very innocent and therefore hard to corrupt, and that's really cool, feelings introverted function.
And there's 2 types that both have that, and that is the INTJ and the ISTJ.
Yes, these people are actually people you would want to go up and ask questions of. Here's another reason why you want to know the MBTI, and it can help you through life. If you identify somebody in your life who is an ISTJ or an INTJ, you would do well if you were trying to solve a moral dilemma to go to them and ask them what they think is the right answer.
And expect a straightforward answer.
Oh, and the really cool thing about these 2 people is they won't mince words. They're fairly direct. When they give you the answer, it will be the answer that they believe is true. Whether or not it hurts other people's feelings isn't so important, because you know what? If you had a doctor that knew you would be upset if he told you you had cancer, and so he just didn't tell you because he didn't want to upset you, would you think he was a good doctor? Because what if you could actually go get a treatment and solve the problem? No. It's better to know the news even if it's bad. Now that's me as a first function T person, last function F person talking, and it's still true, even if I was first function
Yeah, basically, as an INTJ, if I was that doctor delivering the bad news, I might say, okay, you have such and such cancer, you're probably going to have about 6 to 8 weeks left to live. You can go ahead and have a miserable life and have chemotherapy and try to stretch that lifespan out, or let's try some alternate therapies. You have nothing to lose.
So, a lot of times when people think MBTI, they're thinking the test. And the I stands for index, so it kind of is referring to the test.
Index or indicator.
Myers-Briggs typology indicator. But you could just say it's the letters, because the letters have become fairly universal. People understand the letters. Now the test itself, as C.S. Joseph will tell you, he doesn't like the test. And the reason he doesn't like the test is he was testing wrong on it for quite some time. But the trick with the test is, when somebody answers the question on the test, you have to wonder if they even know themselves and how they actually interact with the world well enough to accurately answer the questions.
Yeah, do they understand the question, and are they actually truly answering it for themselves, or are they answering it for how they think they should be?
Between the fact that that 3 different people can read the same question and think it's asking 3 different things, and even if you did accurately understand the question, you may not accurately answer how you behave in such a situation, because you're looking at yourself possibly through rose-colored glasses. Maybe you need a third person's perspective or whatever. Then the test looks like it fails a lot. But the fact is, if you answer the test right, I think you'll get a very good answer. You'll get an accurate answer on your cognitive stack. But what C.S. Joseph does, and this is why going to his channel and learning a lot about what he has to say, is he'll teach you how to type people by how they behave. And that's really the end-all and be-all of it. But there is something that he introduces you to on his channel, which is that there are 4 sides of the mind. You have the ego, the subconscious, the shadow, and the superego. And this is even an embellishment upon the MBTI that other psychologists have come along and proposed. And he...
Like BB, yeah.
Yeah, and he agrees with it. And he is an ENTP, which those guys are visionaries. He's probably right that these things are, that this does pan out. And he's been looking in, he's been studying this stuff for years.
I'm still personally on the fence on the BB stuff. So, you know, Mr. TI judgment function first position has, you know, kind of made his judgment on it. I'm Miss, you know, NI perception hero. I'm still on the fence and still looking into it.
Yeah, one thing that you should know about Candy, if you watch her other videos, is when she makes a statement about something, it's not made lightly. That's something you can pretty much take to the bank. And if you have a reason why it's not true, wow, that would be helpful information. But chances are it is true.
Yeah, and if you're going to tell me it's not true because such and such expert says it's not true, that's probably not going to be good enough for me, because I don't care how many letters someone has behind their name or how many papers or books that they have written. So you're going to have to give me something more than that.
Yeah, they've got to actually be able to have a proven track record of getting things correct. And then the counter information will be definitely worth, it's going to start looking like it's worth looking into.
Because, you know, when I research something, I am looking at what other people have said about the topic. I'm TE after all, so I'm extrovertedly thinking. But I'm looking at it from all sides. I'm looking at the pros and the cons and the alternate explanations.
But with the 4 sides of the mind as being a possibility, and I think the ego and subconscious are definitely something that's out there. I think that Freud was onto something with the subconscious. I don't know that he got it actually all that right. He may have had a little bit too much focus on sexuality or whatever. But I think the subconscious is happening. But what C.S. Joseph talks about is that people can transition between the different sides of the mind. And in these different sides of the mind, you have other cognitive functions as your first function. So my subconscious is actually an ENTJ. And ENTJs are fabulous managers. TE is my first function if I'm transitioning down there. And C.S. Joseph, on his channel, you can watch him take people and type them based on how they're speaking, the words they use, and how they look at things. And he'll teach you how to do it by watching him do it. It's really pretty cool. But I've seen him get tripped up a couple of times. There's neurological wiring associated with how you were born at birth with this nature functions and the cognitive stack that you have.
Yeah, I've noticed he gets some of his P's and J's mixed up in some of his typing.
And I think sometimes when I watched him typing somebody, and he was mentioning, as he was typing them, he saw them change from one thing that he would have said they were to something else. He goes, wow, I think they're transitioning. They're cognitive transitioning. And I think he probably was right about that. The thing is if somebody's going to cognitive transition and you're going to type somebody based on how they're speaking right now, how do you know they're in their ego, which is where they'll be most of the time? It's the most natural place for them to be. If you want to type somebody accurately, I think you've got to include the physical neurological wiring that is associated with how they were born.
Yeah, actually the 2 main things I use the most, I use behavior and how they talk last. The first 2 things I use is often you can at least glean enough from their behavior to determine their temperament type. You know, and then you've already got, you know, 2 of the letters in the 4-letter type. But yeah, so I try to determine their temperament, and then I look at the physical cues, and then I will confirm those with what the person is saying or how they are saying it.
And what is a good book for learning about the temperaments? She read a fabulous book on this subject.
Oh, well, it's a book C.S. Joseph doesn't really like, but I love, and that's Please Understand Me by David Kiersey. And he's got volume 1 and he's got volume 2. I read both. Frankly, I think the original is better. Well,
C.S. Joseph, actually in one of his videos, he said, I actually think Kiersey's pretty much right about the temperaments. I think Kiersey's actually got some, we have to give him his dues on the temperaments. And if you actually learn about the temperaments, you can kind of get a good gist of how somebody is when you first meet them, and that will narrow it down quickly for you.
And by the way, an alternate theory to, instead of the BB, four sides of the mind, is actually to read a book called Personality Types by Lenore Thompson. In my opinion, that is the absolute best MBTI book I have read yet. And she actually gives a stacking all the way down to 8 cognitive functions. So you have your top 4, and then she kind of goes into the 4 that you don't technically really go into, but that you could cognitively transition into.
Yes, and if you listen to C.S. Joseph long enough, you'll definitely hear him criticize the MBTI test. But let's not confuse that with what Myers-Briggs did, which was bring in the 3rd and 4th cognitive functions, and I think the axes, T-I-F-E. What's important about that is when you start to actually type somebody based on their physical features, you can tell by somebody's smile how they're neurologically wired, their nature at birth. And this can help solve the problem of if they're cognitively transitioning between the different sides of their mind, you can know where their ego is at, because that's how their most basic wiring is. So let's do an example, for instance. There is what's called an FE smile and an FI smile. I have an FE smile. If you know about the actress Goldie Hawn, FE smile. When you smile, the corners go back.
And his upper lip does not go up.
Yeah. My upper lip kind of stays stationary. Corners go back. And another thing, if you watch me talk, the upper lip is fairly immobile. And also, this is something Candy came up with. I've never heard anybody else say it, but she noticed it. My corners are up in kind of a resting position.
Yeah, they kind of rest somewhat angled up.
Corners up. And when I talk, upper lip fairly immobile. My bottom lip does all the work pretty much. Now, my wife, because she's FI, has an FI smile. FI smiles, mouth resting, corners can be straight to down.
I hate the resting mouth. I don't do a resting mouth. I always hold it tense. But yeah, resting mouth, I'm usually down.
Corners down.
See?
Corners down.
Don't like my resting
So
mouth.
because my wife is a J personality type, and J people are on time and they are put together, she actually walks through life trying to hold the corners from being down because she does not want to present that to people.
And I always have this fear that my mouth is going to get stuck more and more in a frown.
Stuck in a frown position. When my wife speaks, she has a very active upper lip because she has muscles wired in here that can pull the lip up.
But you can see when I talk that my upper lip is very
active. If you watch her videos, you will watch the upper lip curl.
Yeah, I have a very wiggly upper lip. He's got a very stagnant upper lip.
She can curl her upper lip out. She can do it so much she can make it touch her nose.
Yeah, so when I smile, I don't necessarily have the corners going up like the happy face Walmart sticker smile. When I smile, my upper lip slides against my upper teeth and goes up towards my nose.
Yeah, she smiles by lifting her upper lip. And this causes the corners of her mouth, when she's smiling, to be more in the center of the smile. Mine, the corners are near the top of the smile. Her corners, when she smiles, the lip lifts to show the teeth. The corners may pull back a bit, but they do not pull up. And yeah, I'd say smile, yeah, exactly. So that's the FI smile. And
FI smile.
When we take family pictures or something, it's actually rather obvious when you look between the two of us.
Yeah, and you'll see too with the FI smile, the distance between the upper lip and the nose gets shorter. FE smile, the distance stays the same. See, my lip is going up to my nose when I smile. It slides up my top teeth.
Exactly. And her corners end up being halfway between the top of this lip and the bottom of this lip.
Yeah, I can't do the ding smiley face. That's an FE smile.
Now, what you got to watch out for, though, is there's some people whose natural lip design is that their lip is quite a bit high enough to where you actually might see the front teeth.
Yes, you have to watch out for genetic anatomy.
Yeah, the genetic anatomy might have their upper lip kind of high up. But that doesn't mean they're lifting it. They could still be FE. What you're looking for is when they smile, those corners just go back.
So if you see someone with an FE smile, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're a feeler. It means that they are FE or TI. So you know they have FE or TI, but you don't know which one is higher.
Yes, the important thing about this is once you know which F they are, you know which T they are. So the F and the T are on an axis. If somebody's got TI, they've got FE. If they've got FE, they've got TI.
Yeah, and since it's obvious that I have an FI smile, that means I also have TE.
Yes.
And I am a high TE, low FI user.
Yes, if you meet somebody and they're very low drama, and they're easy to get along with, things can really mess up, and they're not getting all flustered and dramaed out and everything, they're probably a T personality type. Now, if you look at their smile, if they are corners back, FE smile, you know they're a TI. That puts TI in the first or second position. Because you know they're FE, so that's TI. My wife, she's not drama. She's very easy, she's very easy when things get messed up. She's not very likely at all to kind of go off the handle or anything like that. But she's FI, so now we know she's TE in the first or second position. That narrows things down quite a bit. Now you're down to, is it four personality types left.
So now you're narrowing it down. And then if you've already determined from talking to them their temperament,
if you know their temperament.
Close.
Yeah, like for instance, an SJ personality type, those people are very loyal, they're on time, they're very duty oriented. They're called the guardians. Then you have an SP personality type. Basically, you're highly tattooed, motorcycle riding, with the hair on fire, possibly jumping off of a mountain with one of those suits that let you fly through the air. Yeah, that's an SP personality type. So if you know that, and then you've also figured out that they're not an F, but they're a T because they're low drama, and you figure out whether or not they're TI or TE, you're pretty much there. Now you know what personality you're dealing with. And to learn what these different personalities are like, C.S. Joseph isn't bad. There's there's a lot of good information on that out there. The books that my wife had mentioned already as well. The other thing that can help you zero in if you don't know the temperament is if you know whether or not they're NE or NI. And that's how the eyes move. And so here's some more of that cognitive wiring. That wiring you were born with that you can't do anything about. I have what's called NE eyes. When I look around, if I'm like thinking to myself, thinking, wow, what did I do with that wrench the other day? Where did I set that down? I can't find my wrench. When I do that, I'm looking around.
Yeah, he has sweepy, what I call wandery eyes. He
And
kind of looks around.
I look, my eyes sweep around. I don't necessarily go to any specific location over and over again. It's kind of random, and I look all around. Well, that actually matches what NE is. NE is intuition, extroverted. And extroverted means any extroverted, those kind of people are interested in seeing patterns and understanding just about anything in the world that can be understood, whether it has to do anything with their future or not. So, like, I might be interested in the electric universe, even though I'm probably never going to go into space, that kind of thing. My wife, on the other hand, with NI is intuitiveness that has to do with her particular future.
Introverted.
Introverted. The things she's specifically interested in and where her future is headed. And the interesting thing about it is,
I've actually been studying electric universe and quantum mechanics and relativity and all of that too. But I'm studying it because I'm seeing how do these tie in with how God created everything, because I'm a Christian and I study the Bible.
Yeah, so she's understanding how these sciences explain how God made the universe around us. And that universe is part of her world, what she's living in. So my eyes sweep around smoothly. They do not dart. I cannot move my eyes quick. I cannot jerk my eyes around quickly. Even if I tried, I can only move them so fast. But I also sweep all around, which has
so you need to see the person just having a conversation in their natural relaxed state and watch their eyes. So while his, as an NESI user, his eyes just kind of wander and sweep, me, I'm different. As an NISE user, my eyes will predominantly stay mostly on a horizontal plane, and they'll mostly just shift from between just 2 or maybe 3 points. And my eyes will my eyes will tend to move in jerky movements, not as sweeping and not very wandery.
Yeah, if she's talking from memory and she's not focusing on trying to make eye contact with the audience, and she's just kind of going ahead and going into her head and thinking back in time, or what are your thoughts on this, she's probably going to make her eyes dart, and I mean dart,
Yeah, the
to
eyes
2 or
will
3
shift.
positions on a horizontal plane. There's not going to be much of this going on. See?
Yeah, you'll get that occasionally if I'm trying to recall something. See, I'm looking up into my mind. You know, that's a normal physical thing that pretty much everybody does. But you'll see that a lot less with the NISE users. Also, I've personally noticed the NISE users oftentimes will stay more focused and staring at the camera the whole time that we're talking, and then it's hard for you to gauge their eyes. As for the NE users, will more frequently break away and wander.
Yeah, so if you're watching a YouTube video and you're wondering about the cognitive stack of the person you're listening to, if they're able to stay focused in on that camera and talk to you for like 15 minutes without looking away, that's probably an NI user. Somebody like me, an NE user, I'm probably still going to wander around a little bit as I talk to you and come back. What's very interesting is that, you know, the NE is interested in just about anything in the world, whether it has to do with anything that's specifically having to do with my future right now or not. But the NI person is focused on, with their eyes, what they're doing, where they're at, and their future, which is, in the next few minutes, I'm going to be talking to this person in camera, and that's where I'm looking. And so while I'm talking to the camera, I may also be wandering around, kind of noticing a wide spectrum of things to see if there's any patterns to pick up, which is what NEN is all about. And Candy will be looking into the camera and focusing fairly strictly on that. Once you understand which N somebody has, whether it's NE or NI, now you know which S they've got. Because my NE goes with SI. You know, intuition extroverted goes with sensing introverted. Intuition introverted goes with sensing extroverted. Candy's very good at noticing the world around her in the moment, in the now. Whereas SI remembers things well, has a lot of memory associated with it, and I remember past sensations or how I saw things fit together in the past, and then my NE can work on that.
And you see, I don't even have SI, which is generally past and memory in my top 4 cognitive functions. So a lot of times my memory either has to be something I've stored in my mind that I figured would be useful for my future, then I'll have it memorized, or it has to be tied with a physical thing, like it has to be a smell or a texture or a certain thing that I'll see, and boom, it brings back the memory. And that's my inferior SE, extroverted sensing.
I have noticed, as I've been studying this for over 2 years now and thinking about it quite often, as I'm always thinking, but the eye functions seem to have more memory associated with them. Candy's NI, her first function, her all day long function, which is thinking about what's going to be coming in the future, planning for something in the future. Her NI seems to be able to recall memories that are important for these future events. My TI builds and stores memories that have to do with logical conclusions and how to make these conclusions well. I'm being able to pick out what factors in a problem I'm trying to solve are important and what factors are extraneous and don't really matter as to solving the problem. So I've got good memory as to what is and what is not relevant. I also have SI in my third function as an INTP, and that helps me remember past events that I have seen sensing-wise, like if a wheel was to break off of a car, if a certain amount of force was to be put on it, or something like that.
You know, there's one more physical trait that you can look for to help you narrow down someone's personality type. And this physical trait's best, especially when you're just beginning to look at when they're walking. If you see a P personality type and a J personality type walking together, especially approaching you or from behind, it can be pretty hilarious because P's and J's walk significantly differently.
Yes, that's the other part of it. The other way you can narrow down somebody's type is whether or not they're a P or a J. If they're a J, they're probably on time. The house is probably kept at least neat. And when they move more rigidly, shoulders square, and with a purpose.
Posture, yeah. And
Yeah.
we kind of lead with our shoulders. And like you said, shoulders are square.
Shoulders square. If they move their arm, the arm moves, the shoulder stays in place. But if I move my arm as a P personality type, if I move my arm up, why, my whole body might move at the same time. See, a J personality type moving the arm, a P personality type moving the arm.
So if you see a P walking down the street, they kind of do a natural strut. You know, they're kind of all loosey-goosey.
Yeah, hey, how's it going?
Yeah, but you see a J walking the street like me, I have good posture and I am stiff. And I am purposely walking to
Shoulders
my goal.
square, arms moving for balance, but shoulders maintaining pretty square.
So it can be really funny if you watch people walk and you see a J and a P and they're walking side by side. It's a hilarious contrast if you notice it.